Welcome, everybody, back here at Segal Talk, Manhattan, Midtown, and it's still a bit cold here, but we are restarting, luckily, our Segal Talks. Last week, we had the great Bob Wilson with us. It was quite a significant conversation, I thought, and as we all know, it's one of the most beautiful things one can see on the stage have been created by him, but his outreach to the community, his great watermill center that he created out in Long Island to be close to nature, but also to contribute to a community. It is quite stunning and truly, I think, extraordinary. Today, we continue and we have, I think, a very significant, important and meaningful conversation. And the guest today is Olga Garay-English. And Olga is how would we say, there would be a heaven of stars, of presenters, of people who support the arts and theater and performance in New York. She is one of the stars, the guiding lights who we listen to, who has engaged deeply in the field. Olga has been an independent arts consultant since 2014. And she is based in Los Angeles, in California, and there she works on national but also international projects. She's been a senior advisor to local and international programs, to the city of Los Angeles, and to the Councilman Tom LaBonge. She is a creative strategist to UCLA Center for the Arts and Performance, a center we all admire, we look to. CUNY is a big, big public center, but also UCLA, you know, is something we have followed, and we had many, many artists and also teachers from there with us, Travis and so many others. And she's a resource and program development for Emerson College Office of the Arts, I think the California branch. HowlRound, where we are on, is also supported by Emerson. So we are really grateful for that. I think Olga also supported HowlRound very, very early on and was on the National Advisory Board. She's a senior international advisor to the Fundación Santiago in Chile, the director of the California Institute of the Arts, Latin American Caribbean, Latino Initiative, and a visiting professor for the CalArts School of Theater and Management and Planning. She's a project manager for the Ford Foundation, the great Ford Foundation, and to the US Latino Arts Future Symposium, and the senior advisor to the France Los Angeles Foundation, FLAX or FLAX. So it's as you can see, and this is only touching some parts of her work, and over decades, she has, I would say, also dedicated her life, work, and energy to the field of theater and performance. Olga, welcome, and sorry we made you up before 9 o'clock in Los Angeles.
Well, I'm so pleased to be here. Thank you for inviting me, Frank. It's been a long time. We haven't seen each other.
Oh, that's true. That is true, as with so many people in the world. Olga, how are you in this time of Corona?
Well, it's been a very difficult year, as you can imagine. You know, our field, the performing arts especially, has just been completely stricken by the coronavirus lockdowns and various regulations. So it's been a challenging year in terms of trying to stay connected, trying to stay relevant, making sure that we as a field of performing arts presenters are committed to keeping international cultural exchange and engagement alive and vibrant now and into the future. With all of the travel restrictions and all of the uncertainty that has really gripped the world, a group of us have come together digitally. As a matter of fact, the next conversation I have is a Zoom call with this group. It's called the International Presenting Commons. And actually HowlRound has been supplying the administrative support for this group. It's a group of about 20 of us, people who are committed to international cultural exchange and engagement, to keep, discussing this, keep it on the front burner, not let people, sort of slide into protectionism, and really to keep the international arts ecosystem as fully integrated as possible during these really very challenging times.
What do you talk about when you meet?
What do we talk about? We talk about everything from how to advocate for increased resources from both the public and private sector to keep international work fully vital and engaged. We talk about things like visas and how do you put together digital programs so that we can continue supporting the artists as they make work. How do you how do you break the way that the business was conducted in the past in terms of people like me just jumping on a plane to go see a theater show and then turning around and coming back 2 days later, and what an imprint that has on the planet. We talk about how do you rethink what commissioning work should look like so that it's not as product oriented as it has been in the past, but really more about keeping artists fully present and provide resources so that when we can open up again, there will be shows that will be made. And so we talk about a lot of stuff. How do we collaborate more effectively with our counterparts in other parts of the world? So it's a pretty intellectually focused group of people. We have some of the top presenters in the country. UCLA, the Center for the Arts for Performance. We have the Public Theater in New York, Arts Emerson, Stanford University, ASU, Arizona State University, all, some pretty major centers and leaders. And then we also have a handful of people that are creative independent producers. So these are people who actually work hand in hand with artists to get the resources in place that artists need to make new work. And so they are a very vital part of the delivery system that we have in this country for sure. And many of them support US artists wanting to do work abroad. And sometimes they support artists from abroad who want to come to the United States. So it's a very reciprocal kind of enterprise. And we have been meeting since about May of last year, so almost for a full year, and really are very keen on engaging with both public and private funders and policymakers so that we can just keep this item on the table. When the pandemic first hit and the lockdowns began, a lot of presenters were talking about just focusing on local artists or artists who could drive from their hometown to, where the presenters theater was. But that really sent a chill. And of course, this was during the past administration. So there was already a feeling that America was increasingly closing itself off from the broader global community. And so there was a real sense of urgency that that people just wanted to gather virtually to start just breaking down these barriers that keep cropping up. And so it's an ad hoc group. People have been volunteering their time, although the Mellon Foundation gave us a very small amount of money for administrative support, but by and large, most of the people involved are just volunteering their time, because this is just such a an important element of what the artistic programming for some of these performing arts centers need to be. Many, as you know, Frank, our country is very pluralistic, and so if our performing arts presenting colleagues are going to be filling the needs of the multicultural communities where they are based, they really need to put people on the stage that represent those diverse communities. And so the people that are involved in this International Presenting Commons, and we use the name Commons really very much influenced by the work of HowlRound and the Theater Commons, the Latino Theater Commons that HowlRound also supports, because we're committed to sharing intellectual knowledge and cultural knowledge, and really looking at this as a way of breaking away from competition and oh, I have this premiere, so you can't have it, or I have this exclusivity clause, so you can't, present that artist within 6 months of me. And so there have been a number of behaviors or practices that became sort of entrenched in the presenting field that we're really questioning about, is that the best way to work? It's not, you're not doing an artist any favors if you say, oh, if I present you on my stage, you can't work anywhere within a 90-mile radius for the next 6 months. That kind of, we're really questioning the way that we do business and trying to align our business practices with much more progressive goals, and that's everything from climate change to exclusivity clauses to how do you build a tour that keeps artists working and secure and reaching audiences without some of the harmful side effects that were more prevalent.
Yeah, well, tell us more about what are you questioning. This is significant for all of us to hear, that you are so deeply engaged in a discussion that in a way was started by Corona, right? The time of Corona.
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting side effect that one of the results or the outcomes of the Corona crisis has been a soul searching, if you will, of people really trying to figure out how to reshape their the way they do business so that respectful of the planet, and so that they're more collegial with each other, and in service to artists. And so for example, Arts Emerson, since we're on HowlRound, one of the things that they did was they have a relationship to a Chilean artist, a playwright named Guillermo Calderon, who is one of the most well thought of artists. Huh?
He was on Segal Talks too.
I didn't hear you.
He was on our.
Yeah, good.
Yeah.
So he's he's a really extraordinary artist, and he very much gets his vision from contemporary social causes. And so he has been at Arts Emerson on a couple of occasions and was supposed to be there during this season, but of course, because of COVID, that had to be postponed. And so what David Dower, who was until very recently the artistic director of Arts Emerson, decided that he was going to give a $25,000 commission to Guillermo to just work on whatever he wanted to work on with no real strings attached. It wasn't like, oh, we're going to give you $25,000 and we need a, 3-act play by, October of 2021 that we're going to, show at our theater over a 3-week period. It was very much, what are you working on? How can we help you get to the next level? You tell us what you need. And it's a very different way of framing a commission, which had become much more transactional, of, here, what are the deliverables, and, what is the budget, and how many people are going to be on the stage, and that kind of thing. This is much more of a nurturing of an individual artist's voice. It's like, what do you need from us to help you stay working and engaged and to keep your company going? And so thinking more expansively about how we support artists is very much part of the discussion of this International Presenting Commons.
Are you guys worried about the future of international presenting in the US?
Yeah, I think that we're more hopeful now, obviously, because the administration that is currently in the White House has a much more progressive vision as to how the United States fits into the global order. And we are re-entering into like the Paris talks and on the environment, the Iran nuclear talks. We're regaining our seat at the global table on so many different topics. So far, the arts have not been, really targeted in terms of, getting us back out there. But I think that conversations are starting to happen. I just participated in one that the Kennedy School in Boston and Harvard put on last week about international cultural diplomacy and the role that cultural diplomacy needs to have in our new administration, and how we can get back to that kind of soft power discussion of how to deploy that in a way that is not maybe as manipulative as it has been sometimes in the past. As you well know, that it was much more sort of anti the Cold War. There was a not very hidden strategic and tactical approach to it wasn't arts for art's sake. It was, how do we show people behind the Iron Curtain, or people, in countries that are kind of on the target of the communist bloc, that the United States offers artistic freedom and nurtures artistic dialogue. I think that the current vision is not quite as transactional as that, and it's important that we are part of that kind of a global discussion, because it's a powerful and positive discussion versus, how do we talk about nuclear disarmament. So many of our global interactions are based on crisis and pandemics, or climate change, or whatever, and to have a place where positive cultural exchange can take place and build attention and awareness and
and sympathy is something that we can offer to the globe in a way that, you know, politicians can't. You know, the artists can bring a sensitivity to an interaction that is very rare in other settings.
Yeah, we just featured a bit of work of Milo Rao, for example, and certainly, you know, that's the case that it makes it so clear. And it's true that art should play a role in cultural diplomacy, and a good one. I do know that also after World War II, um, American abstract expressionism in painting, you know, was much highly favored than the work of the living theater, you know, or politically engaged artists, or Auguste Boal or others. You know, they said, no, that's much safer. We don't, but still, at least it was serious engagement with the arts. Louis Armstrong was a cultural ambassador.
Yeah.
And it's underestimated how important, you know, arts is. And someone once said, you know, whose songs you sing, whose book you read, whose films you see. That's a powerful fiction, you know, and it is a strong one. It is important, and it's also honest. Or there is free art, or there is not. And I think we can contribute to that. What do you think was really wrong before Corona in theater? Like, let's put aside, what do you think did not work at all? And what needs to be fixed?
In theater specifically?
Yeah, theater performance.
I mean, to me, the regional theater movement in the United States, which really was a product of the Ford Foundation back in the 60s, kind of coming up with this idea of what a cultural community should look like. And I don't say capital, cultural capital. I don't use the word capital per se because it connotes a very big city. To me, it connotes a very big city, sophisticated, etc. We're talking about, you know, any kind of community that prides itself on having a cultural infrastructure. And so that meant that you had to have a theater, that meant you had to have a museum, often a performing arts center, maybe a ballet company, an orchestra. And in the case of theater, it led to the creation of what we call the regional theater system in the United States that is still alive and thriving today. I think that it was a very place-based strategy. So it was about that community and what that theater meant in that town. And what I think resulted is that there has been a hermetization of theater in the United States that many other countries don't have, meaning in many countries in Latin America and Europe for sure, many theater companies are structured so that they are so it's a touring art form, so that they can go to festivals, that they can go, you know, they can be itinerant, they can go from town to town, country to country. That is much less prevalent in the United States. As I said, you know, the regional theater movement tended to reward and prize being in that community. And so there was a lot less openness to other ideas and other ways that people worked. And so so a very American type of theater language has emerged, which is, you know, pretty inward looking, whereas theater in other countries is has its own language and its own persona, but they expose themselves much more to influences that are going on in other countries. And so I think that that's one, and also here there is, I think, an over dependence on set design and, you know, the look of the production, so that sometimes like the larger theaters, they spend, you know, $500,000 on a set that is up for a production for 3 weeks, and then they tear it down and it goes to landfill, you know. Whereas, you know, in other places, there's a lot more dependence on the corporal manifestation of the actor. There's a lot more emphasis on sort of the imagination and almost minimalist set design, because it's meant to tour. And these are huge generalizations, of course. It doesn't mean that there are no companies here that do that. There's certainly companies that do that. But they're sort of more the exception than the rule. And I just think that, you know, and again, in many other countries, there's a real festival culture, which I think is pretty much missing in the United States. You know, you can count the festivals probably in one hand that are of any, you know, major consequence. I mean, for example, the Next Wave Festival, which the Brooklyn Academy of Music has produced for, I don't know how many years, 20 years, whatever. In my mind, that's not really a festival. It's a season, you know, because it's like over 4-month period. You know, performances happen individually. It's not a festival. I mean, to me, a festival is when you can go and see, you know, 20, 30 productions over a 10-day period from all over the world, from, you know, the Lincoln Center Festival was like that. And unfortunately, it's no longer available. You know, it no longer exists. But there's very few really world-class festivals, theater festivals in the United States, as far as I'm concerned. And that, you know, I think that we really need to look at that, because it creates this atmosphere that is very heady, very intellectually stimulating. It really engenders dialogue across cultures, and it's a format that I think, you know, the United States is sorely lacking. I mean, can you think of any exceptional theater festivals that?
No, I wish.
You know?
I wish
Yeah.
I could say. I really, really do wish. And it's stunning. As you know, we are trying to put together for June 2023. We're going to ask New York theaters to present a great work of their own, and also host someone, maybe with a group of international curators. And hopefully you can maybe also help us to do something. The Avignon Festival, the Edinburgh Festival,
Yeah.
both came out after World War II, after a time when there was no exchange, a time of fear, a time of death, not as actually as light as Corona. It's just for us to imagine what our ancestors went through, our forefathers, people who are still. It's incredible to think, really. And the older I get, more stunned and horrified I am about what happened, especially also, of course, Germany. But I think we do need that, and we will try that. I think you are right. That kind of the idea of the Festspiel, celebrating life, but also celebrating a city. Avignon celebrates as other people. They are proud. They see things. And there's what we really miss now is exactly what theater gives us: is conversation, art, looking at things, and also trying at least to convince not the people we already know are, in our side, but also the ones who Edouard Louis said in one of the talks on the Milo Rouse, said, I write theater so not for the people who are already convinced, for the people who are not listening, who don't understand, who maybe to help them with imagination. And I think festivals can do that, and they are more powerful than corner demonstrations, because they have life in them and they have truth in them. And but we will have to work for it. Do you? What do you see? Also, you're globally connected. Also, of course, a lot to Latin America. We can talk, but do you see new forms? Do you see something emerging where you say, that's interesting. That's we haven't thought of that before, what people are doing at the moment or what they are planning?
I mean, I think that to me, the whole rise of the digital language has been really an interesting development. Obviously, there are great limits that having to rely on a digital platform impose on you, but there are also liberations that the digital medium has brought to bear, such as, you know, artists in two completely different parts of the world being able to collaborate on a piece, because, you know, all of a sudden somebody that is based in New York can be working with somebody that's based in Sao Paulo digitally, and create a work that would have not been possible before. You know, they can stay in their own communities, and they can collaborate with a number of people. I think that for me, the least satisfying digital manifestation has been when people just take 3 cameras and shoot a theater play that, you know, was just, they just shoot a theater play, you know, so it's still framed for what should be a live experience, and that becomes kind of tedious to me. The works that I have resonated with most are works that are conceptualized for the digital medium, and that really take advantage of what that interaction is. For example, I've been involved with this artist from Chile. His name is Francisco Reyes. He's a very well-known actor, and he's been in film and television. He was in that Oscar winning film from Chile a couple of years ago, A Fantastic Woman. He was the love interest. Anyway, about 6 or 7 years ago, he and his adult children put together a very stripped down version of Hamlet that they took to small towns throughout the country of Chile, many of which had never seen live theater before, let alone Shakespeare. And they, you know, they did they introduced Hamlet to these villagers. Well, about a year ago, they decided that they were going to make a digital version. So, but instead of just filming an outdoor performance of the work that they had translated and interpreted from Shakespeare, they rethought the whole thing for the digital medium, and it became all of the characters were clay puppets, and Francisco, the main actor, read said all of the dialogue as if these clay figures were, you know, enacting the play of Hamlet. And they did really interesting things, like they spliced you know, film into it, and they did these shadow puppets, and it was just a completely new show. It wasn't just we're regurgitating the show that was supposed to be in front of a live audience. It's rethinking, what does the digital medium afford you that is not possible in live theater? Like, you know, there was a lot of close-ups, there was a lot of, you know, focusing on the hands, there was a lot of things that if you're, you know, sitting in a theater with 200 other people, you would have never gotten that perspective, because you'd be watching from afar. So, you know, really, I don't think that the digital medium is going to go away once our theaters reopen, but I think that it's going to become certainly a component of how theaters enter the post pandemic world, and it does give you possibilities that were just not really ever implemented before. I mean, they were available, but nobody really took advantage of them. I mean, even how around this platform, you know, it's a way of reaching people that had we been at the Segal Center, we wouldn't have been able to reach. I mean, I did a couple of programs with you at the Segal Center over the years, and you know, it was who managed to be in New York City and made it to, you know, to the Lower East Side, and that was it. That was your audience. And now people can, you know, they can tune in from Germany or Shanghai or, you know, Great Britain or, you know, Argentina. So it has its pluses and its minuses, but I think that I think people are starting to really adapt to it so that it's going to have a life of its own from now on, in my opinion.
Wow, that's quite a prediction. I think it's an interesting one. You know, in Germany, traditional, in France, theaters have three divisions. It's drama, ballet, opera, and something. Yeah, there might be a fourth one, the digital branch, because it might happen again. And also, the numbers of people reached are enormous. What people experienced, and we will see that. But as you say, it has to be a reinvention and not a double fold. Already so often, especially in the US, theater looks like television and it looks like a reality. And then if you're on Zoom, then film theater, but then it should look like TV, but it won't look like TV because they know what they're doing and they're getting into that. No, we have to be like the painters and sculptors who were liberated by the photo camera to say they could do their surreal work, or they could work that deals directly with imagination. So Olga, tell us a bit. You started out also, you didn't mention it in your CV, but in Miami. How was your experience for you? Also, how did you get to your job? What you did? And how was your experience as a woman and
well, you know,
Latin American work? Tell us what was your journey?
So I didn't study the arts. I studied, I have a master's in community psychology, which is very different. Well, it's different and it's alike in certain ways. But I was in Miami. I had just finished graduate school. I was working in a program.
You were born in Miami or?
No, I was born in Cuba.
In Cuba.
In Cuba, and I came to the United States in 1961. And my family was in Miami for about 3 years, and then we moved to Pennsylvania and New Jersey and Northern Florida, you know, for job opportunities, for my mother mostly. But I was working with migrant farm workers using Paulo Freire's liberation pedagogy as a means to teach them reading and writing and English as a second language. And we use the arts as a means of building community and building trust. But it wasn't an arts program per se. It was really more about literacy and language proficiency. And then Ronald Reagan came into power, and he squashed all of those programs because they were grant funded. And I needed a job. And back then, you still looked at the want ads in the newspaper to look for a job. And there was an ad from the Metro-Dade County Department of Cultural Affairs. They were looking for somebody to run a new program called the Neighborhood Arts Program, which was to give grants to artists of color and organizations of color and artist-run organizations, sort of smaller and mid-sized. Because back then, which this is in the I would say the mid 80s, most of the money that the county was giving to the arts went to the opera and to the ballet and to the, mainstream theaters. They weren't reaching community-based ensembles or dance companies or whatever. And a lot of people applied for the job, and the executive director took a gamble on me. And within 3 months or so, I knew that that was my life's calling, that I just, really, just blossomed. And it was a very interesting time, because at the time, the National Endowment for the Arts, this is before the culture wars, was really leading the conversation about diversity and inclusion. I don't think that we're calling it that back then. They were still talking about minorities and, having a seat at the table. But those conversations were happening, and the National Endowment for the Arts was deliberately trying to include people of color in their peer review panels and their policy discussions. And so, because I'm Latina, I was just at the right place at the right time. There was an openness and an appetite to bring new voices to the table, rather than just the SOBs, the symphonies, orchestras, and ballets. The sort of the other tier of art making. And pretty soon after I got the job in Miami, I started being invited to serve on panels at the NEA, and then like the Rockefeller Foundation. And so within a year, I was already getting noticed at the national level, just because I was getting, and I said yes to everything, because I really feel that you have to be present, and you have to, you have to be open to opportunities and embrace them. And then within a very short period of time, I started having an international profile. The Rockefeller Foundation asked me to go as an evaluator to a gathering of about 15 or so. They didn't call themselves presenters, because that sector was not very well defined in Latin America at the time, but they were art makers that also helped other artists get their work shown. So they were having they looked to the National Performance Network here in the United States as a model, and they were having the first meeting in Paraty, Brazil, of people from all over Latin America who were, who were acting as presenters in their communities. And the Rockefeller Foundation had given them seed money, but they weren't sure if there was, if creating a network similar to the National Performance Network made sense. And it made total sense, because especially back then, but even today, it was much more likely that an artist or a company would look to Europe, and sometimes to the United States, but especially to Europe, as kind of their North Star. And they didn't have any relationship to the country next door, right? So an Argentine theater company had more of an opportunity to present their work at a festival in Italy, for example, than going to Peru, which, is just, up the continent. And so we created something called La Red Latinoamericana de Productores de Arte Contemporáneo. And it was, I went from being the evaluator to becoming very much part of the discussion, because I was part of the National Performance Network, so I knew very well how it functioned, what the parameters were, what the structure was. So I volunteered to write a proposal on their behalf to the Rockefeller Foundation, which I did when I get back to the States. And Rockefeller gave them $750,000 to get started. And they funded this network for 10 years. So they gave over $7.5 million over that 10-year period. Plus, I also helped them get money from the Ford Foundation and AT&T. And, you know, I was kind of the interlocutor, if you will, between this group of Latin American presenters and the United States, because the money was here. So I helped to unlock that. And that really, you know, gave me a very significant role to play in Latin America ever since then, because, you know, I was really the go-between, you know, the philanthropic community and the artistic community. And, you know, it's a role that I still play today. I'm very involved with Fundación Teatro in Santiago. I've been working with them since 2014. And do everything from help Chilean artists to come to the US and beyond, to, you know, I've helped them go to Hong Kong and different parts of the world to show their work. And I also curate American artists to go to the festival that they put on every year. I think it's one of the top 3 international festivals in all of Latin America. And you know, artists, Bob Wilson has been there a couple of times. Actually, you said that you had Bob on your program recently, but Elevator Repair Service, the Wooster Group, the Actors Gang here from Los Angeles, Tim Robbins' company, has been down there. I've helped them get work from Cuba, because you know, I'm Cuban. But, you know, I mean, I really don't limit myself to just the exchange between the US and Latin America. I really see myself as an internationalist, and you know, I'm just as prone to promote a work from a Chinese playwright that I've seen. I've just been in touch with Wang Chong, who presented a work at Under the Radar about 3 years ago that was just stunning. And so I'm trying to get them to Chile. And so, you know, it's really about being impacted by the work. You know, when a work speaks to you, it doesn't matter where it comes from. You know, you just want to share it and support it. And so that's been my philosophy throughout my 30+ year career. Is like, you know, be present, be engaged, you know, speak your passion, promote collaboration, all of the things that all of the positive things that being involved in the arts can afford a human being, and that sometimes are just absent because it becomes a commodity, or it becomes a business. And I think that's it's a shame, and it's to our detriment when we don't focus on the many positive things that the arts bring to humanity.
What are the lessons you learned in over all these decades? What are the important ones for everybody also starting out, or young curator artists, people like you who are in between cultures, who bring things together? You as a woman, as a Latina, as an organizer in general, what has impact? What did you learn? What worked?
Well, I mean, I think that again, understanding your own motivation and understanding what you bring to the table is a critical part of, you know, finding a seat at the table, right? So know yourself, know your strengths, know your weaknesses, know what you're passionate about, and you know, just make things happen. You know, don't wait for somebody to tap you on the shoulder and say, oh, what if, you know, it's make work. One of the best things that you need to, that people who are entering the business need to learn is, how do you raise money? How do you write a grant? How do you review a grant? How do you bring financial resources to bear, but also intellectual resources? How do you connect people? And I think that, you know, having that realization that this is a business that, you know, you don't just, most people don't just go into a studio by themselves and compose a big work of art, you know. You were talking earlier about the abstract expressionists, you know, they could go into a studio and make a painting on their own. And, you know, that was kind of like the iconic thing to do, right? The artist in the ivory tower and the garret, just imagining things. You know, the performing arts are a lot more interactive, and they require people working together. And so I think that being, again, being present and going to listen to things like this program, or, you know, tuning into HowlRound, or, you know, showing up at a festival, even if you don't have you know, a function there, just see work, see what artists are, you know, saying, and which ones really speak to you, and discuss it, you know, talk to your peers about it. Develop a vocabulary that is, you know, perceptive and intelligent and grounded, and just be in the community, be out there. And I think that, you know, the more you make happen, the more people will come to you, because they know that you deliver, and they know that you can make things happen for them. And so I think that those are the, you know, they seem obvious, but a lot of people, you know, just sit around and expect to be tapped on the shoulder and discovered or something. You know, it's really about being part of, you know, a larger community. I mean, the fact that Melanie Joseph, a dear friend of both of ours, said you should talk to Olga, because she's dealing with international you know, matters. You know, that's an act of proactive engagement, right? It's how do you connect people that are in different places in your orbit, so that new dialogue can be engendered. And you know, that to me is a very giving stance and persona. And I think that's what you need to, that's what people need to lead with, is how do I become, I mean, that's why the concept of the commons is so intriguing, because it's really it debunks competition. It is about collective good and collective creating a collective path forward in the most you know, deliberate and philosophically healthy terms. And I think that, you know, as a society, the more that we can permeate everything we do with those kinds of values and ideals, it comes back to you. Those actions and those belief systems have a way of making you attractive to people in the deepest sense of that word.
Yeah, that is true. And also things are possible, as the great work of the Foundry Theater and Melanie shows. You said, so many theater machines were designed to do plays, and we love them, but like in the museum, there's a variety of paintings, of colors, of projections. That's also what we need. And the Foundry has done that. Stunning how complicated it is for them to get funded and to do the work, but there is, it also shows it is possible in many many ways. It's getting slowly closer to the end. Before I ask you what you're working on, who else do you follow? Who are theater artists, companies? And no, you don't want to play favorites, but something that just comes to your mind. We think this is at the moment that's meaningful to me.
That's an interesting question. I really think that the work that is coming out of Latin America, which is very socially engaged, is finding resonance with me right now, because with all the racial injustice protests and all of the reckoning that we're coming to as a country, grappling with those themes is really important. I just saw a piece that Dale Orlander Smith did after the flood, dealing with the killing of Michael Brown and how it impacted the community in St. Louis and Ferguson, and people who are bringing those kinds of issues to bear witness are really meaningful to me right now. I'm working right now on a really interesting project, actually, that tells this very little known tale about a program that the president of the Philippines initiated during World War II to give refuge to Jewish families fleeing Nazi Germany. And it's over 1,000 Jewish families were harbored in the Philippines. And a very, I find him just an extremely talented and delightful playwright, Boni B. Alvarez, who's Filipino himself, is going to write this story. It's a true story, told by a gentleman named Ralph Price, who's now 90 years old, and he was invited to the United Nations to tell his story. But he went with his family when he was 8 years old. I was 8 years old when I came to this country from Cuba. We chose Boni as a playwright very deliberately, because he has this kind of magical realism touch to the works that he creates, that I thought would really bode well for telling the story from the point of view of an 8-year-old child or a 10-year-old child, versus a sort of a more typical melodramatic Holocaust story. I really wanted to bring that sense of his daughter, Jacqueline, said that, her father saw the World War during, through the eyes of a child. And how do we tell that story that doesn't belie the horror, but also shows the magical elements? They wound up being on a mountain with guerrilla fighters and Filipino families that were hiding from the Japanese invaders. So, the idea is to tell this, what was a tragic story at a very real level, with this other story of empathy and a poor country reaching out to a peoples to give them safe harbor when the country was economically very precarious stage itself. And so there's a beautiful metaphor in there. So that's something that we just started working on, and hopefully it'll be ready to tour in 2022-23 season.
Fantastic.
So, yeah.
As they once sang, in the year 25, but it will happen. Listen, Olga, we are getting close to the end, and I know you have to join that significant, important also a group of international arts presenters. Thank you for, for caring with your group and your people for us to create work and to make it happen, that we can see something outside the tunnel vision of the US. The Penn World Voices, the Writers Organization always says 95% of all books are American books. You can buy bookstores or British, mostly American. The rest, 5%, half of them are French or German because they are supported, but there's only two books out of 100. And the same, I guess, is with plays.
Wow.
Maybe we even have a worse record. Who knows? So this is important. We feel we are on your side, and also our work has been part of that. Really, really thank you and congratulations on going on. Also thank you for telling us a bit about, your project and how you got to this this field. So it's important to everybody. She said, listen to what's happening in Latin America. So this is a significant hint from everybody, and we believe that too. And so this is of importance. And what she said, don't wait for someone, to tap you on the shoulder, or as Susan Sontag said, don't wait till society kisses you on the forehead and then you do something, get a diploma. Engage, listen, participate, and show that you care and contribute. So really, really, thank you, Olga.
Thank you, Frank.
Yeah,
thank you for inviting me, and stay in touch. And if you're going to do this festival, I'd love to be involved.
Thank you, and thank you for being such a good friend to the Segal Center, but also to HowlRound, and also, to the Los Angeles community and internationally, the bridge you created, and these are real bridges. And yes, it goes back to a foundation, like a Rockefeller Foundation. They were going to take a chance, like someone took it on you. They also took a chance on an idea, and it has been so important and significant. We're going to continue this week. Tomorrow we have John Glover from the New York Youth Symphony and the On-Site Opera. They do fantastic work, often unannounced in stores and behind. And we're going to hear more from John. And on Friday we have Peja Musijevic, and he's going to talk about the Baryshnikov Art Center, but also about the Tippett Rice Art Center. So, and both of them do create interesting work in this time of Corona. Elizabeth Hayes suggested us also to connect to them. So we will hear what can be done. And to our listeners, really thank you for taking time. When we started last March, we were one of the only people doing these talks in the time of Corona. We did it actually 5 times a week. We were the only institution worldwide in the theater that produced content every day. And we talked to over 150 artists from 50 countries, and we are continuing now, but also with the outlook, what can we do now? We want to do something, want to be part of it. We cannot also just talk. We also have to do something, but it is important to listen. And it was great to listen to you today, Olga, and thank you for sharing. And everybody, you at home, really thank you for taking your time. It means a lot to us that you participate, and thanks to HowlRound. Thank you. Bye-bye. And
thank you.
Only 3 minutes late for the talk. Say hi to everybody. Okay, bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.